Earnestly podcast coming to you on August 15th, 2021. How you guys doing? It's been about 10 days since the last podcast, man. Just honestly went to a little hiatus. I didn't really plan on doing that, but life happens and things of that nature. Of course, this podcast is subscribed to on all podcast catchers, especially on YouTube. Check the YouTube page, of course. But like I said, a lot of things going on with me here last week or so. My kids are back to school. My youngest kid is actually started preschool last week. My oldest Eli, it's been one weekend. It's been smooth sailing. He did miss Friday though, one day because of he had an allergy attack, so that was a little bit of an issue. But other than that, he's been very happy back to school. Actually, all his friends are in the same class with him as him too, also and whatnot. So it's been kind of cool to deal with that with him. He's been cool that unfortunately our youngest kid Logan has a little bit harder time adjusting. He went the first couple of days. It was kind of tough. Every day after, he was still crying. It was one of those things where, we were trying to get used to it. And like I said, every kid's different sometimes. Every kid's different, how they adjust to this new thing. I know when my oldest Eli started preschool back in, about a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, it was pretty easy. He was excited about it. He didn't cry. We didn't. I mean, I don't remember actually getting emotional about it when he went to school. My wife, I don't think she got too emotional about it. I mean, she may have a little bit of tears just because of the fact that that's what she just does. She's pretty attached in that way. But it was a lot easier with our oldest kid, going to preschool, and he adjusted pretty well. Unfortunately, with our youngest, this has not been the same. It's been a major hurdle, in fact. So now to the point where we are actually looking into another school. I think tomorrow we're going to check that school out. There's another school near our house and see if they if it's something that maybe he will adjust to that school. It was suggested to us by a good friend of ours, and we'll see what happens there. The one thing that will change though is that if he does go to this new school, he will not be going to school in the mornings anymore. He'll be going to school in the afternoons, and maybe we'll see if that helps the situation. Whereas this preschool he started going to last week was 8:30 to 11:30 in the morning, which would have been convenient. I can take him to school and go to work after, because I go in 9 o'clock during the week. This one will be a afternoon session from 1 to 4. So that'll be a little bit of a culture shock, if you will, for us, having a child starting school at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, it's not, for me anyway, I mean, I know this has been done before, and obviously have it available. This is not ideal in that I'm not necessarily used to this. But I'm trying to remain open to new ways of things, especially when you consider the fact that, this is every child's different. Every child is adjusts differently. This week has been tough for our youngest. The good news here is that at least now, and I think the last solo probably did. I said this that we had really started ratcheting up his potty training, because he was not really fully potty trained for up to a week before we started going to school, and we really lit a fire on his ass, and he is now officially fully potty trained. He's been adjusted very well, and he's now fully potty trained now, which is great. So that's been a positive. But him not being able to adjust to school so far has been a bit of a challenge for us. But we're working on it. We're gonna do the best we can to see. Try all options here. I'm trying to remain open-minded about the situation, and and we'll see where that goes. The school schedule should free up some extra time for podcasting. I know in the morning would have done that in a couple of days. I was hoping to do the morning thing, especially too, because for example, with my schedule, the 2 days that I would actually get open time for not just podcasting, but more time with my wife alone is like on a Tuesday, for example, if he was in school during the day. My wife and I would be able to go to breakfast in the morning, or have alone time here at home. Albeit 2-3 hours, but still it's better than nothing. And on Thursdays would have been great too, because I now have those hours to record podcasts or whatever, and do whatever I want to do in my some me time. You know what I mean? Because she will go to work on Thursday mornings, and I'll be home. But now with him going to school, probably most likely, if this works out, it will be a situation where he'll be in school now in the afternoon, which will still create some time, in the afternoon, but not as much as I was hoping for initially. But listen, it's about the kids, about them being comfortable, make sure they are in the right situation, whatnot. So we'll see how that goes. I'll update everybody listens to the podcast, well, where that goes. But again, this is the thing. When you're a parent and you got multiple kids, and it's one of those things where you just have to adapt and try to be as adaptable as possible. And we're looking forward to this situation. There was a thought that maybe we're considering maybe keeping him out of school a year and then him start a year later, but I'm against that. I'm against that. There's no reason for him to be starting preschool at 5 years old. He'll be 5 next April. There's no way for him to. There's no way I would want him being in preschool a year later when we can avoid, if we can avoid that. Especially now, the major hurdle, in my opinion, was really the potty training, and we pretty much got that under control now. So, well, we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, there's a lot of so labor of love, man. This is not easy, but again, there's no excuses here. We just have to go with the flow. We have to, just do what you got to do as parents to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our kids and whatnot, and just make sure that the situation is great for them, and so we'll see this new school. I mean, I like the school he was in before too. I mean, they did last week. I mean, it was a good school. There was good staff, whatnot, but I don't know. Maybe it's not a good fit with him, because every day he was there, he was coming out of school crying, and not just crying, but crying like aggressively. And I'm not saying that it's a bad situation, but maybe it's just something he's not comfortable with right now. We'll see. We'll see how this new school goes. I mean, this new school, what we saw, some of the research I was doing with my wife over the weekend, is that it looks like it's a school that he might like. It's actually they have cameras there too, especially that you could check in on your child while you're not there. So there's some certain amenities that we may benefit from, if we decide to go this route. So we'll see how that goes. We'll obviously keep updated with that as the time goes on. Okay, so let's talk about some things that I've watched recently. Netflix recently put out a documentary series called Untold, and the first episode of this series is about the Malice in the Palace. Now, if you're an NBA fan, you know all about this. This is the big brawl that happened in November 2004 between the Pistons and the Pacers. That the big fight that happened. And it was highly publicized a lot. We listened to a lot of podcasts and a lot of radio shows and stuff. The main subjects of the documentary and the main subjects of the fight itself. Jermaine O'Neal, Ron Artest, Steven Jackson, Ben Wallace. And it goes in detail about the happenings of the fight, the aftermath, the reaction, and everything else. And for what I understood, there was the footage that they got a hold of recently for this documentary was not available for anyone to have until recently. They decided to make a documentary out of it. I thought it was a really good documentary. I actually enjoyed it. Definitely eye-opening in parts. I remember watching that game in real time. I did watch that game in real time, actually. I mean, if you're an NBA fan and you take yourself back to that time in 2004, the Pistons were the defending NBA champions. The Pacers were a title contender that year and the year before that. So this was already a rivalry that was already, on the up and up. Like, in fact, the Pistons on the way to winning a championship the year before that had beaten Indiana in the conference finals in 6 games. And these were the clear two best teams in the conference, in Eastern Conference at that time, and even that year. In fact, many people argue that the Indiana Pacers were actually the favorites to win the title that year. The one thing I wish that we had more in documentary, which is, and again, documentaries, like I said in the past, are a thing, you can take it or leave it, the perspective, but this one was pretty balanced. The one thing I will say, I wish it was a more wide-ranging discussion with players who were involved in the melee, outside the immediate people. The immediates like Artest and O'Neal and who am I missing here? Ben Wallace and Steven Jackson. One of the things they say in the show in documentary, because at the time, so in the game, for example, the Pistons were down big. The Pacers were up big in that game. Under a minute left in the game, they're up by, 13, 14 points. The game was out of reach at that point. And Jamal Tinsley, the guard for the Pacers, had allegedly instigated to Artest to, go get a cheap foul. Go get a cheap foul on whoever, Ben Wallace, whatever, which happened and which triggered the fight. Now, the fight got more wide ranging when you start having fans in the stands, throwing a beer bottle or maybe a cup, which obviously Ron Artest reacted to, and that really blew things up to a crescendo. The funny thing is, what's weird about this game too. You look at this game, and obviously at that time, the Pacers were up by 14. Like I said, it was whatever it was. They were up big, double digits at that point, and Detroit had really no way to come back in the game. Is why the hell were the starters in the game in the first place? That's what got me. It's like, why were they in the game in the first place? First off, at that point in the game, they should be out off the court anyway. But again, you can play armature quarterback now and in the past, and think that's okay, whatever. But obviously Ron Artest, and we weren't as a nation too talking about mental health. Now, we've known about Ron Artest's mental health situation in the last decade or so, especially with his time in the Lakers. It was discussed internally with Indiana, but we were not still comfortable as a society talking about mental health. So they go that's another angle of the documentary too. They go into Artest's mental health and him not wanting to play that year, and he wanted to take a break, and a lot of stuff there. It's really good. To me, the person that gets hurt the most in this whole documentary, not so much because they were talking bad about him, but in terms of like the legacy and the aftermath and whatnot. Jermaine O'Neal, the center for the Pacers, to me, and he admits this too, that because the suspension really hurt him more than anything else because of the image it presented towards him. He could have, to me, Jermaine O'Neal, skill set wise, could have been an all-time great. At that point, he was actually one of the better players in the NBA and ascending. Again, the Pacers were a favorite to go to the finals that year and possibly win the title. Now, whether or not they actually beat LA the year before that, I don't know. Though LA had a lot of their own problems that year, it was very possible. But Kobe in the trial and internal fighting, if Detroit beat them, maybe Indiana could beat them too. But who knows? But Jermaine O'Neal could have been an all-time great, not just like because he was a good player. He was a very good player. He's not a Hall of Fame player, but he's a very good player. But he could have been a Hall of Fame player had this thing doesn't happen. He's probably ascending. Maybe they didn't win the title, but instead you got Ron Artest suspended for the year. Jermaine O'Neal missed 30 games, I believe it was that year. Steven Jackson missed a chunk as well too. He took the biggest hits. He took the biggest hit really in the end because Steven Jackson goes on to win a titles with San Antonio. Ron Artest goes on to change the name to Metta World Peace, and he wins a title in 2010 with the Lakers. Whatnot. Jermaine O'Neal was probably the best player of the bunch, and he could have benefited because, and especially as the game progressed in the teen years, or the aughts, where his skill set that he brought to the court at that time, was still it suited today's game. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had a perimeter game. He took the ball to the basket for a 7-footer and all that. He was very skilled, And again, the Pacers that year too, especially, are one of the biggest what-ifs in the NBA history because, again, we're talking about 2004, 2005, being one of the favorites to win a title. What could have been for this team? What if they had kept this team intact? I have doubts they could win a title. I don't know. They're very talented, but they were still a very good team. They were. That's also Reggie Mills last year too, especially. He still had something in the tank. What if the Pacers actually that does not happen? Who knows? One thing we can say with looking through this documentary and looking through the details and what we've known with the film and all that thing that's happened in the aftermath, the NBA was definitely heavy-handed, with the penalties. But at the same time, it's in the sound, and people may not agree with what I'm going to say here, but I'm going to say anyway, you can't blame David Stern either because at the end of the day, David Stern's job is to make sure his league is clean and make sure his league is running the way where he can make the most money as possible. His job is towards the owners and making sure they are in a position to make money. And at that time, whether we agree or disagree with the way the media portrayed the players, which by the way was disgusting. The media doesn't matter, liberal or conservative doesn't matter. Viewing these guys as thugs and all that, they definitely set a bad narrative for the league, and David Stern had to respond in a way enough to the point where he made his message known. Again, he was heavy-handed. I agree, and I think most people do agree with that. But in the moment, I can't necessarily blame David Stern either for doing what he did. At the same time, so also they got the guy who threw the water water bottle, whatever it was. The guy on camera, he was on. Obviously, he served some time. I don't know if he got jail time, but he definitely had he definitely got dealt with because the DA in the case ended up investigating the way he should have, and in the end, David Stern was heavy-handed, and you look at why this escalated the way it was. The fans really ultimately were the people who were the ones who really exacerbated the issue, if you will. So, also the guy who came into court to punch, that tried to raise his fist at Ron Artest, and Ron Artest co-clocked him, which he deserved. He was a douchebag then. He was on this documentary. He's still a douchebag. He's still a douchebag. And I wish you could hear this too. You're still a douchebag. What the fuck are you doing in court in the first place? First off, you're a tool. Okay, you're a tool. And him sitting acting like whatever. No, dude, you're wrong and you're wrong. That's it. Own that. So anyway, but check it out. It's on Netflix. Malice in the Palace, Untold, the Untold series. I don't know what else stories they're gonna touch on this series, but I'm looking forward to watching it. It's very, very well done. So okay, NFL season is actually, well, not the season, but the fake season is upon us. We're one week into preseason football. And how I've been for years. I don't really care about the preseason. I mean, I do check in for the stories and to make sure no one gets hurt, obviously, because you don't want any of your star players to get hurt. But this is obviously the time of the year, mid-August now, where NFL is about 3 weeks away. After Labor Day is coming up soon. After Labor Day, the season starts. And you start getting the narratives, start getting the stories and whatnot. In 2 weeks from this podcast, as we're doing this, we've done every year for the last 10 years of this podcast. We always do our over-unders every season with me, my friend Zach, and Chris. We're going to do that again in 2 weeks. That podcast is scheduled for August 28th, 29th, 2 weekends from now. So we're going to be doing that. And obviously, you will look out for that podcast when it comes out. But to get excited for the season, I'm going to share 5 stories for the 2021 NFL season that I'm looking forward to entering this year. So, number 1. This is not in particular order in terms of what's more exciting or not. I'm just giving you 5 stories off the cuff that I'm looking forward to talking about. And I may share 5 more next week. Who knows? Number 1. Can the Tampa Bay Buccaneers repeat? And can Tom Brady sustain? Okay. So obviously Tom Brady's first year last year at Tampa. He's 44 this year. The Bucs, won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady at the helm, first year in. To me, they are the favorites. You look on the NFC right now. What teams can contend? Well, I think the NFC West teams, honestly, which I'll get to in a second, are going to could be a problem. Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, as long as he's healthy, could be a problem. And then that is it. The NFC, has teams that can compete, but Tampa on paper, to be honest with you, is arguably better than they were last year. On paper, they're better than last year. So, and remember, last year they hit a little bit of a bump in the road middle of the year. Remember, they went 7-5 to start the year. And then after that, they won every single game after that, including the Super Bowl. So, and now they're better. So, Tampa to me is, I wouldn't go so far as say they are the heavy favorites, but it's fairly significant. It's fairly significant because again, I think they've gotten better. I don't think any other team in the NFC, except maybe the Rams, getting Matthew Stafford, got better. So, could the Bucs repeat? Yes. Brady can sustain. We'll see. Tom Brady, obviously he's 44 years old, but again, the guy cares. So, why bet? At this point, 7 rings in, why are we betting against this guy? The guy still gives a shit. So that's what the first story I'm looking forward to seeing this year play out. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins and Tua, the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. I live down here in South Florida. I always say the Dolphins are my second team. I'm a Giants fan, obviously, diehard Giants fan. But my second favorite team is the Miami Dolphins. I say all the time that I root against the Dolphins only once every 4 years, and that'll come this year when they play the Giants. Dolphins were 10-6 last year, missed the playoffs by a tiebreaker. Tua, lots of mixed reviews on him as the future. Is he the future of the Dolphins or is he not? I don't know. There rumors about whether the Dolphins could go after Deshaun Watson and another quarterback, but right now they are sticking with Tua, which is good. I'm glad they're doing that. I want to see if this kid can grow. He's a great kid for starters. He's a great kid. So I want to see things play out for him. Let him get a fair chance, a fair shake at this. The Dolphins should be pretty good this year. To me, it's this simple. If they make the playoffs and Tua is decent, he'll remain the starter going to next year. If the Dolphins don't make the playoffs this year, then obviously you look at other situations. This team is ready. This team is a playoff team, roster wise. The big question here is how good is Tua? How good he's going to be? We shall see. He's the number one question because their defense is fine, O-line's fine, they got receivers, they got decent running backs, they're good. Quarterback is the number one question. That's simple. Number 3, the NFC East. What's real? So, if you ask me as a Giants fan, and by the way, the Giants are in the NFC East, if you had to put money on who will win the division this year, who's the best team in your opinion that's prepared to win the East right now, just on paper and just, a safe bet? I'll say Dallas Cowboys. They got Dak. They got a good roster. They got Zeke. Defense is kind of O-line is decent. But I would say of the 4 teams between the Redskins, Giants, and Eagles, and now the Cowboys, they are probably the team that is well equipped to win the East. Dak Prescott to me is a top 10 quarterback in the league. On the bottom of 10, but he's still top 10 quarterback in the league. The question to me is this: who's a team that can make things go crazy, go haywire going forward? So the Eagles will be terrible this year. The Eagles are rebuilding. The Eagles have traded Carson Wentz, and they're starting from scratch. The Redskins made the playoffs last year, nearly beat the Buccaneers in the wild card game, but they don't have a quarterback. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is what? Good every 4 games. You can't rely on that. Now, their defense is fantastic, but we don't know if this team can win 8-9 games. But again, that's all what it may take to win the division, though, too, depending on how it plays out, as you saw last year. The team that can change everything here for me, for anybody, and the perception of the NFC East, is the Giants. Nobody could put their hands on the New York Giants because the Giants, on paper, have gotten better. Defense is solid on paper. You get Saquon Barkley back. They have good receivers. I'll say it again, and I had my buddy Corey Vasquez on the podcast about 2 weeks ago, and he said himself, and we both agree with this. What about Daniel Jones? This is year 3. If Daniel Jones takes the next step, because he has the talent to do it. To me, he's a very talented guy. He's mobile. He has a great arm. He's a great build. He's tall. He's had some decent games to make you believe that he can be a really good quarterback in this league. He has the tools to be a top quarterback in this league, but he turns the ball over so damn much. He has bad pocket presence and whatnot. So can he clean up his mess? Can he clean up that? If he does that, in my opinion, this is a 10-plus win team. If Daniel Jones takes next step, I'm not even saying be MVP. I'm not even saying him to be Tom Brady like Aaron Rodgers like. Just be a good quarterback with a good roster. They'll win the division. They'll be ahead of the Cowboys. That's simple. But that's a big if. And to me, this is the year. This is the year. Because if the Giants and Daniel Jones don't take the next step this year, he's gone. He's obviously going to be the quarterback, probably in waiting, whatever. He'll be probably gone, or at least, they're not going to probably sign him. I mean, we'll see. David Gettleman, GM, will probably end up being gone also, too, because that was his draft. That was his selection. So, big year for the Giants. This is a huge year for the Giants. This is arguably the biggest year for the Giants since probably one of the last Eli years, honestly. And it's a couple of years now. So, we'll see how it goes. Number 4, Aaron Rodgers. Is this really it for him in Green Bay this year? As you saw, the biggest story of the offseason, of course, in the NFL was Aaron Rodgers and his situation and him wanting to leave to get traded, whatever. Didn't happen, obviously. They came to a conclusion. They shortened his contract. He had 3 years on his contract, went down to 2, and year 2 after this year, he has pretty much an option. They'll discuss it after the year's over, the future. To me, it comes down to this. If the Packers win the Super Bowl, he's probably going to end up staying. But if the Packers don't, he's got the Super Bowl, I think this is Rodgers last year. We'll see. I'm really curious, and I'll say it again, I'm really curious how this plays out throughout the year, because he is, to me, the greatest quarterback in that franchise's history. He's not the most liked, though. And I'm wondering the Packer fans, who are very loyal and very, they'll speak their piece, how they will adjust to Rodgers this year, knowing that this could be his last year in Green Bay, because Brett Favre was forced out of Green Bay. It's a big difference. Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay, but he's maybe open. There's still a door for him to stay long term, depending on how this team builds around him, how they adjust. We'll see how that goes. Last story I'm looking forward to this year, and this is something I'm actually thinking this could really happen. Can the NFC West take all 4 teams to the postseason? Now, as you know, we now have 7 teams per conference make the playoffs. 4 divisions, which opens the door for a possibility of 4 teams in the division to all go to the playoffs. You look at the NFC, the West. To me, the NFC West right now on paper is easily the best division of football. Niners, Seahawks, Cardinals, and Rams. And you can argue all 4 teams either got better or will be better or still decent enough to make the playoffs. You know, Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks, top 5 quarterback in the league. The Niners won the Super Bowl like this a year ago. Okay? Had a lot of injuries last year, but were in a lot of games. They'll be back. The Rams got better now with a quarterback, Matthew Stafford. The Cardinals are on the ascent. You look at the teams in the NFC right now. Who are your locks? I mean, do this locks thing with me and my buddy Kyle Nash on this podcast when we get to the end of the year. You know, to me, the locks in the NFC are this. You have NFC East. The East ain't taking more than one team. We know that. The East is taking no more than one team. So either Giants or Cowboys, maybe the Redskins. But not 2 or 3 teams. That ain't happening. And NFC North, that could be the division where maybe you get 2 teams. I'll put in Green Bay as a lock because it's Aaron Rodgers. Oh, he's healthy. And then after that, the 3 teams down the list ain't the Lions. They got worse. The Vikings, maybe, but I don't trust them. The Bears, I doubt it. I mean, we'll see, but I doubt it. I mean, last year, but I doubt it. NFC South. Okay, the Bucs are a lock. Okay, another 3 teams. Panthers, rebuilding. Falcons, can't trust them. Saints, pretty much rebuilding. Drew Brees retired. We know how good they are. So, to me, the NFC West has a very good chance, and I think the likelihood is actually more than 50%, that they will take 4 teams to the playoffs this year. It's a very good chance it's going to happen. So, we'll see how it runs out, honestly. But it would not shock me at all if the West takes all 4 teams to the playoffs this year. So, anyway, we're looking forward to NFL, and I said I'm looking forward to that. The Overrunners podcast we do with my boys Zach and Chris in 2 weeks. Can't wait to do it. My favorite podcast of the year. That and the NBA one, which we all do as well too in October. So, anyway, let's talk some wrestling real quick. AEW Rampage debuted this past Friday night. AEW Rampage is their second show. Remember, they have Dynamite on Wednesdays. Rampage on Fridays now. 1 hour show. Typically, Friday nights are historically a graveyard for television because Friday nights, you know, most people go out unless you're older, you know, 50s, 60s. You go out or you make plans or you do family things and don't watch TV or watch movies, whatever maybe. You know. But Friday nights has been decent for WWE. SmackDown is right now their best show of the 3. NXT, SmackDown, Raw in terms of ratings. SmackDown, they get over 2 million. They got close to 3 million last week on their episode. So the door's open now for something else to slip in there. Rampage being on a Friday night. It's 1 hour. It's simple. You know, I love the 1 hour. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind if it was 90 minutes. It kind of remind me of Sunday's main event back in the day. It was 11:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. You know, I was concerned originally about oversaturation because there's a lot of wrestling as it is anyway. You know, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, and I love AEW obviously. You know, and I'm even trying to follow the other promotions. You know, like Ring of Honor and Impact and all that. You know, so AEW as a company itself could definitely use a second mainstream show because they have AEW Dark on YouTube. I don't watch that. It's too long. It's like 17 matches in 2 hours, and I can't do it. And most of those don't even move storylines. It's really there to feature second and third tier wrestlers on their roster, which I get. I get it, but I don't have enough time in my day to watch that as it is. Okay. Now I don't know how this show will be once or how it'll be utilized once the hype wears off because right now the hype is great, is real. You know, this past Friday was the first show. They've done. You know, and this week it'll be in Chicago, and that's the show where CM Punk is supposedly expected to make his appearance. I mean, if the rumors are true, at least that's the way that AEW has been teasing it, or at least the internet's been teasing it that way. We'll see how it goes. But the show was pretty efficient. It was 3 matches. You had obviously Christian Cage and Kenny Omega kick off the show, and Christian Cage won the Impact title. You had the pretty much almost a squash match between freaking Miro and with the Figure del Sol, and then of course the women's title match between Britt Baker and Red Velvet. Basically they did the right thing here by featuring all their champions minus the tag teams. I don't know how the show will be presented in the future. We'll see how that goes. But I'm okay with a second show, man. I think this is good, and I think it leaves room for other talent to be featured too as well. That doesn't get enough airplay on Dynamite. But we see how that goes. I will say the one problem with the show I do have is that they're going with a 4-man booth, and to me it's already overkill with 4-man no matter who you have in there. But when you have Chris Jericho, and you have Mark Henry, and you have Excalibur, who I do love, and who's the other person there? Was Taz? I think Taz is the 4th guy there. It's too much. Chris Jericho's. I don't mind Chris Jericho behind the mic. But Chris Jericho behind the mic with 3 other guys, he takes out the oxygen out of the room. He's too loud. He's too boisterous. You know what I mean? And it was too much. So I'm hoping Tony Khan at some point down the road makes an adjustment. Like the 3-man weave they have on Wednesdays it's borderline accessible as anyway. But it kind of works though. It kind of works because JR and Jim Ross is a little older, so he's going to be doing his thing there. You have Excalibur with bringing in the freshness of it. Shivani's a legacy guy, and he also does a lot of in-ring stuff. So let's get a couple episodes before I really judge it. But 4 guys doing it behind the mic, 4 guys in the booth is just way too much, especially for a 1-hour show too. It's only a 1-hour show, so I don't know. That's what the one negative of the show was that. So all right. Before I go, last thing I want to talk about, I'm still wrestling real quick. Malakai Black. Malakai Black, formerly Alistair Black at WWE. I was at the pool with my kids today, and I got to relax a little bit, and then go swim around, whatever. I got to not get a tan because there was no sun out today. I don't get a tan. I'm black enough. But listen to his appearance on the Talk of Jericho podcast, which I really enjoyed. Malakai Black was released by the WWE over the summer, and I was there when he made his debut in AEW in person. I went to the show last month, the first road show for the AEW in over a year since COVID. But it was a great episode on the podcast with Jericho. Going to talking about his build into the business and whatnot. He's from Holland and he's from Europe, obviously. So his obsession or fascination with the occult and religion and all that, and how his character was inspired by that. I love how transparent he was about how he was handling WWE. When he first got there, and then when him and Vince were supposedly trying to work things out, what to do with him, and Vince had nothing for him. Apparently, he said he'll try to just do something for him, whatever, and it never happened. And then he was out for about 6 months, because nothing for him in creative, and then he comes back, which is weird. Which is why when he got cut, he was back on TV in late spring, and then I don't know where he gets cut. Out of nowhere. And then we find out that his contract was never updated because when he was in NXT, I guess at NXT you get a 30-day non-compete, and then if you call it to the main roster, it's adjusted to a 90-day non-compete. But they never actually updated it. So he was telling a story about how he saw that and he went to make sure he called the company WWE and asked them if this is actually a real thing, and they say yeah, looks like it is. So this is why he was able to debut sooner, because we all thought he was out for 90 days, and then only to find out he debuted literally 30 days after he got cut by WWE. Like I said, I was there in person for the debut due to a clerical error. Laid back dude, man. Love Alistair Black. Hope Malakai Black now. Tommy End. Hope he gets used the right way. Love how they've so far booked a few of him and Cody Rhodes. His first match pretty much destroyed Cody Rhodes almost in a squash match, to the point where Cody Rhodes is going to be off TV for a little while and all that. So this feud is not over. I'm sure they'll have another end to this feud once Cody Rhodes comes back to the company, comes back to wrestling again, because I'm sure he's doing TV for the time being. But yeah, good dude, and love hearing about his the things that hearing his mind, him talking about how Terry Taylor and Paul Heyman, how good they've been to him and all that. It was good to listen to. It was really good to listen to. Real laid back dude. It was good to listen to that podcast. I love listening to wrestling podcasts, talking to wrestlers that's not fully varnished, that's actually more unfiltered, and being able to talk, because the wrestling business is not like Hollywood. It's very much more grungier, much more real than people make it out to be. Yeah, I know you go to WWE, and unless you're Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin and Tippy Top, The Rock, but hearing the guys, the mid-level guys, and hearing their journey and the backstage stuff. That's why I got back to wrestling too, because I was so fascinated about these guys and their journey and their stories behind the scenes, not just on TV but behind the scenes. And this is the Malakai Black for an hour. Talk about his journey through promotions and now where he's at now at AEW and what he hopes to do in AEW. It's really nice. It's a really good interview, very good podcast to listen to. So I'm very, very happy with that. So check it out. It's Talk of Jericho podcast. Malakai Black, I think, was out last week Friday, so it was about 2 episodes back in the archive. So, all right, that will do it for this podcast. Of course, on August 15, 2021, on Twitter at EJChristian7. Of course, Earnest Speaker podcast on all podcast catchers. Also, check out, if you do love wrestling, like I do, of course, you check out my wrestling podcast as well too. Take 3 Wrestling. We got a lot of stuff going on there. Actually, to be honest with you, all my energy the last 10 days. I haven't done a show in 10 days on this show, but I've been very busy doing that show and doing things there. So, but hope we get back to this side of things in the coming weeks and stuff, especially with football coming up and lots of interviews, lots of conversations we'll have with friends and people, and more solo shows like this. So, till then, we'll talk to you guys later. Love you guys. Take care and see ya.